In the book of Joel, 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 chapter 2. Now, somebody gave me this for Christmas. Okay? This is called Elijah's Extreme. So it's a hot sauce, and it says it's screaming hot. It says you'll regret it. Okay, so now the reason I brought this to you, I got this for Christmas, and I haven't tried it yet because I don't have a death wish, but the reality is that I am going to preach the book of Joel, which is a prophet. And I just want you to know, prophets usually gave their message and then they were killed. Now, I don't expect you to kill me. The sauce will take care of that. But I do want you to know that it's hard to hear a prophet. And I'm not the prophet. I'm just preaching the message of a prophet. Now, it's not that bad, but I just want you to understand, prophets' messages are hard. They're hard. They're difficult. I remember when I was a kid, you get a cut, and back then, my mom had a bottle of hydrogen peroxide. Anybody heard of that? And she would drag me into the house and pour that hydrogen peroxide in there. And then she would put, I think, mercurochrome. Is that right? Yeah. And both of those things did what? Hurt. And I just want you to know that preaching from the prophets is not exactly easy. So here we go. I want you to know that Bethuel is actually Joel's dad. Okay? And his name actually means mouth of God and persuasion of God, as in to persuade toward God. To persuade of God. To actually persuade somebody. And so he gave rise to a son. His son is Joel, and it means Jehovah is the Lord. Or you could say the Lord is God, or God is Lord. I mean, there's any way that you want to turn that around. But here's the thing. His name means that God doesn't just exist, but he actually is Lord. So, what it means is that there's more than just that God's creator, but that God is actually the ruler. That God didn't just make things, but he actually rules things. And I think about that in my own life. Is God Lord? Is he boss? Now, as we go along, you want to remember that the Ten Commandments, which are the Decalogue, which are a bit of a synopsis, if you would, of Scripture itself, all have, you shall have no other gods, you shall have no graven images, you shall not take the Lord's name in vain, and you shall keep the Sabbath and keep it holy. And those are all about, not only does God exist, but he's Lord. He's Lord. And so Joel is actually calling the people of God back to God. And he is telling them that hard times are going to come and that there's going to be a test and that they are going to pass this test, but it's going to be hard. It's going to be difficult. I remember when I was in college, I'd show up for class and they'd have these things that were not exactly always enjoyable called pop quizzes. Did you ever hear about that? Yeah. So I showed up at class one time, and they said, get out a piece of paper, number 1 to 10. And I knew what that meant. I had to come up with 10 answers. And I told the professor, I said, I didn't know we're having a pop quiz. Dumb statement. The professor looked at me and said, thus the phrase pop, Dave. So get out your paper number. I said, I don't need the number because I know I ain't going to get a one of them, so here's my paper. Just turn it in with my name on it. Now, the thing is that it is absolutely true that every one of us needs to be ready, needs to deal with God as God. And we need to do it before the test comes. And that's what Joel's really talking about. And so in Joel chapter 2, verse 1, it says, blow the trumpet in Zion. Now, the way I look at that is this. Blow the trumpet in David Mason's life. Blow the trumpet in the Mason household. Blow the trumpet in my business. Blow the trumpet in my family. Blow the trumpet in my neighborhood. Blow the trumpet in my church. Blow the trumpet. The trumpet is an announcement that God is going to do something. That the Lord is calling people to not only recognize Him as God, but to make Him their Lord. When I was a kid, I knew that lying was wrong. Right? How many of you grew up knowing lying was wrong? How many of you went ahead and lied anyway? Mm-hmm. Yeah, so here's the deal. Knowing something does not make it true for you. So my mom woke me up. I think I was in middle school. She woke me up at 3 or 4 o'clock. I don't know what time it was. I just know it was early. And she told me, come in the kitchen. I was like, man, I knew it was wrong. Something was up because school didn't start this early. And so I come into the kitchen. I come around the corner. And as soon as I came around the corner and I come into the light, bam, she slapped me right in the face and I went right down to the ground. Laying on the linoleum, I was like, what? I had no idea what was going on. I was disoriented. I knew I'd got smacked, but I had no idea why. And then my mother, who never touched me, before or after, never. She said, you lied to me. Don't ever lie to me again. Now go to bed. So I went to my room, but there's no going to bed after that, you know. That day, I not only believed that lying was wrong, actually, as in knowing it, but I actually observed it in my heart. I never lied to my mother again. I didn't always tell her things she wanted to hear. Like when I had these cigarettes, and I said, well, that's not a cigarette, that's a joint. And she didn't believe me. I said, yeah, no, it's a joint. That's why I ate 2 boxes of cereal and a gallon of milk. She said, that is not, she wouldn't believe me. She had a little issue with denial. And so she put them in her dresser drawer of her room. And one day when she was out of her Tarrington cigarettes, she was in full denial. Now, I didn't roll my joints like, you know, looks like a real joint. You had the little machine and it actually looked like a cigarette. But the bottom line is that my mom got an experience she never knew she was ever going to have. And she was screaming, ah! She's like, I told you that it was. So the bottom line, my friends, is that every one of us is going to come to a moment where we have to tell the truth. We have to come to the truth. We will be dealt with and tested by God. And so when it says blow the trumpet in Zion, what it's actually saying, it's saying, look, the day of the Lord is going to come. Now, the day of the Lord can happen in a micro sense and it can happen in a macro sense. There's been days of the Lord in my life, and those have been micros, and there's days of the Lord for us as people and so on, and those are more micro, but there's going to be a macro moment where a trumpet's going to blow, and that's going to be it. And so he warns us in advance. Sound the trumpet. Sound the alarm on my holy hill. Let all who live in the land tremble. For the day of the Lord is coming. It is close at hand. A day of darkness and gloom. A day of clouds and blackness. Like dawn spreading across the mountains. A large and mighty army comes, such as was in the ancient times, nor ever will be in the ages to come. Before them, fire devours. Behind them, a flame blazes. Before them, the land is like the Garden of Eden. Behind them, a desert waste. Now, what this is actually doing is it's talking about an army, but it's actually talking about locusts. And locusts are passing through the land like a fire. They're coming in, and here's a nice, pretty Garden of Eden. And once they come through, it's a wasteland. It's desert. And God is actually saying, I'm going to come and burn everything up. Now, outside of Boulder, in Boulder County, we just recently had a fire. It wasn't in Boulder. It was in Boulder County. It was in the city of Louisville and Superior and so on. And a fire, but the fire wasn't the biggest problem. What was it? The wind. 115-mile-an-hour wind. And took out 1,100 houses in a very short period of time. 1,100 and some houses like that. And all I'm trying to get you to understand is that is a micro of the macro. And it is an illustration for you and I to understand that everything that you know is not always going to be the way it is. That there can be a pop quiz, a trumpet can blow, and accountability will happen. And the reason that this is important is because when that happens, we're going to have to give an account. We have to give an account. I don't know if you've ever done this. You ever been in a bad time financially, and so you just take the bills and you just put them in the drawer. Don't look at them. I'm not going to ask for a show of hands, but I got a feeling that some of you have done that. You know, you found yourself a little bit, too much weak at the end of the money, and you just decide, I'm not going to look at it, I'm not going to pay attention to it, so on and so forth. The house that I live in now, I've lived in it for about 20 years, and when we first moved in there, it was the week of 9/11. A lot of things happened. But anyway, I forgot to turn the utilities on for my new house, as in I forgot to turn the bill over, you know what I'm saying? And the lady I bought the house from was nice enough to leave them on for a while, which I didn't know because I was just living there. I wasn't even thinking about it. And then one day, every utility company showed up almost at the exact same time to do what? To shut her all off. First they came and shut off the water. There was no water. Then the electricity came, shut off the electricity. And I met the gas man in the front yard, and I said, something's not right. And so I called some of the folks in our church. I don't know if any of them are in here right now. But I called them. I said, hey, they shut off my utilities. I need some help. And you know what they said to me? Have you paid your bill, Pastor Dave? I said, it's worse than that. I never got it turned over. So but here's the thing, friends. I just want you to know, okay? Remember, this is extreme hot sauce. Extreme hot sauce. Prophet Joel. These locusts have the appearance of horses, and they gallop like cavalry. With a noise like that of chariots, they leap over the mountaintops, and like a crackling fire consuming stubble, like a mighty army drawn up for battle. At the sight of them, nations are in anguish. Every face turns pale. They charge like warriors. They scale walls like soldiers. They all march in line, not swerving from their course. They do not jostle each other. Each marches straight ahead. They plunge through defenses without breaking ranks. They rush upon the city. They run along the wall. They climb into the houses like thieves. They enter through the windows. Before them, the earth shakes and the heavens tremble. The sun and the moon are darkened and the stars no longer shine. Now, this is going to the macro. Prophecy does that sometimes. It'll illustrate to the micro, and then it jumps right into the macro. And one day, actually, all of creation will actually have a cosmic trumpet blow. Everything will change. The Lord thunders at the head of his army. His forces are beyond number, and mighty is the army that obeys his command. The day of the Lord is great. It is dreadful. Who can endure it? Well, the rhetorical answer is nobody. Nobody. When I was in my doctoral work, I went to a particular part of it, and when I got there, I realized that I had come one day late. And in a professional degree, you don't make a mistake. They demand perfection. And so when I got there, I realized my mistake. I went to the director and I said, I had it down for today. And he said, well, Dave, there's one big problem with that. And I said, what's that? He said, 32 other people showed up yesterday except for you. Touche. Touche. I didn't beg for anything. I said, well, what do I do? And he looked at me and he said, Dave, I think you take your seat and don't do it again. I said, thank you, sir. And I took my seat. Now, I got straight A's through my doctorate, but I didn't, did I? You see, I failed that day. And it would have been completely within his rights to completely deny me $15,000 expense and 3 years' work. Now, my friends, that's the way God works. Amen? There's no pop quiz. He tells us in advance, and he gives grace to meet the challenge. And that's the wonder and the beauty of it. Do you think that I even questioned for 1 second when that director said, take your seat? No way, baby. I took my seat and I got real serious. And I didn't make another mistake from that day forward. You ever heard of Dr. Seuss? Yeah, you're not allowed to talk about him anymore, they say. How many of you are in the military or have been in the military? Raise your hand. Thank you for the opportunity to have free speech, and I'm going to use it, all right? So I'm going to talk about Dr. Seuss whether they want me to or not. Here's the thing about Dr. Seuss. I have one book of Dr. Seuss. One. You don't even know the name of it because it's an unusual book. And when they decided to actually make Dr. Seuss not allowed to be talked about, why, that book went from $11 to $435. Yeah, I didn't sell it because I still want to use it. I like it as an illustration. But there's another book you have heard about. It's called Cat in the Hat. How many of you have heard of Cat in the Hat? Yeah, you bet. Now, what's the point of Cat in the Hat? Well, the point of Cat in the Hat is that the cat comes and makes a lot of trouble while the mom is gone. And when mom shows up, the kids they're panicking. They didn't know mom was going to be there when she was going to be there, and the cat in the hat had messed everything up. And the whole point of the story is, what? He fixes it before she walks in the door. My friends, the Lord is telling us, get right. Get right with God. Before the locusts come and eat everything. And notice what he says. I left the title in. I don't usually put titles in the middle of the verses, but this is the title you'll find between the verses in your Bible. And it says, Rend your heart. Rend your heart. When I do weddings, I almost always now stop and take time and emphasize the vows. Because for most people, they're just words. They're not real promises. I didn't pay attention when I got married. I said the vows they told me to say. I wanted the girl. Okay, whatever they want me to do, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to get the girl. Okay, if they'd have let me skip the wedding, I'd have skipped the wedding. I just wanted the girl. Her name's Pam. She's been my wife for 40 years, but I wanted the girl. That's all I wanted. So by the time the thing was done, I was like, thank you, I'm out of here. And then I spent the rest of my life going, what? What were those vows? Because you see, it takes certain things to actually have good relationships with people. And God has called us to make a vow. To make it now and not later. And that vow is this. Rend your heart. You see, I remember the day when my wife stopped being my problem and became my partner. I'm not being cute. I'm serious. Before that, I was like, oh man, she's a pain in the butt. Seriously. Every guy here, every gal here knows that issue. But I remember the day that God actually got me to see that my wife is not the problem, she's my prize. Now, she's not perfect, neither am I. But this is what God says. Rend your heart. Even now, declares the Lord, return to me with all your heart, with fasting and weeping and mourning.
Is shut down and pastors arrested. A wave of Christian persecution is underway, only this time it's not in China, but Canada. Yes, America's northern neighbor. It's happening mostly in Alberta and Ontario, all in the name of public safety and health. It's enough to make les Québécois shout, Mon Dieu. On May 14th, police interrupted praise and worship at the Mennonite Church of God in Elmer, Ontario. Congregants sang On Christ the Rock I Stand. Afterwards, they exited peacefully, and police locked the building. The church faces more than $100,000 in fines and legal fees. And in Calgary, freed on bond this week, Pastor Archer Pulowski of Fortress Adullam Church says police mistreated him during his recent arrest and jailing. He insists that he became a political prisoner because he dared to challenge political corruption. He warns others, quote, they're going to come after you. It's just a matter of time. Also in Calgary, Rebel News captured weeping family members on camera just moments before police arrested Pastor Tim Stevens of Fairview Baptist Church. They said his worship service did not comply with public COVID-19 health orders, including masking, physical distancing, and attendance limits. The mild-mannered pastor responded.
The government has obviously turned up the heat on churches, trying to discourage them from gathering together. I think they don't understand that Christians are committed to follow the Lord Jesus Christ, regardless of the consequences.
So in Houston, the mayor there several years ago told all the pastors to turn in their sermons so that they could actually go through them to show whether they were socially acceptable or not. Now, none of the pastors actually did it. But the fact that a mayor actually thought to do that. Now, why am I bringing that? What's that got to do with Joel chapter 2? This is what it's got to do with it. My friends, don't wait till the test comes to find out what you really believe. If you don't love God with all your heart, soul, and mind, you will not go to jail for him, that's for sure. Now, I've been to jail, and it wasn't God's fault, it was my fault. And if it wasn't for God, I'd be there again. But the fact is Joel's calling for everyone to rend their hearts. You see, you will never do just what you believe. You will do what your heart believes. I knew it was wrong to lie, but it wasn't until that day that my mom called me to accountability that I believed it in my heart. My friends, God calls us to a heart of purity. That means one desire and only one desire. You can't have two masters because you will love one and hate the other. Even Bob Dylan got that one right. And you and I need to understand he's calling us to rend our hearts, as in to purify our hearts. You cannot love yourself and God. You will always follow yourself. Rend your hearts and not your garments. Return to the Lord your God, for he is gracious and compassionate, slow to anger and abounding in love. And he relents from sending calamity. Who knows? He may turn and relent and leave behind a blessing, grain offerings and drink offerings for the Lord your God. Blow the trumpet, David Mason. Blow the trumpet, Mason family. Blow the trumpet, St. Joe. Blow the trumpet, Green Valley. Blow the trumpet and declare a holy fast. Call a sacred assembly. Gather the people. Consecrate the assembly. Bring together the elders. Gather the children. Those nursing at the breast. Let the bridegroom leave his room and the bride her chamber. This is basically saying, this is so important, nothing else comes in front of it. Not a nursing baby, not a wedding, not a priest. Nobody comes in front of this. This is the most important thing. Return to the Lord your God. Now remember, this is Elijah extreme. This is some pretty hot sauce. But the fact is that it's spice that actually makes everything worthwhile, isn't it? Have you ever seen a potato bar that had nothing but just potatoes on it? Huh? No. Nor have you seen a salad bar that only has salad. They got all kinds of stuff there. To what? Make it taste better. And what I want you to understand is that God's extreme of purifying our hearts and making Him number one is to actually make it better. Let the priests who minister before the Lord weep between the portico and the altar. Let them say, spare your people, Lord. Do not make your inheritance an object of scorn, a byword among the nations. Why should they say among the peoples, where is their God? Remember what they said about Jesus while He's on the cross? He saved others. Why can't He save Himself? Verse 18 says, then the Lord was jealous for His land and took pity on His people. The Lord replied to them, I'm sending you grain, new wine, olive oil, enough to satisfy you fully. Never again will I make you an object of scorn to the nations. I will drive the northern horde far from you, pushing it into the parched and barren land. Its eastern ranks will drown in the Dead Sea, and its western ranks in the Mediterranean Sea. And its stench will go up, its smell will rise. Surely He has done great things. Do not be afraid. You know, when you tell people who have anxiety not to worry, you know what it does to them? Makes them anxious. I had to learn that in ministry. The truth is that it's not don't worry, it's actually trust. Don't deny worry. Put in trust. Don't be afraid. Trust. Tell the truth. Be real. Rend your hearts. Don't just put on nice clothes. Put on a pure heart. Do not be afraid, you wild animals, for the pastures of the wilderness are becoming green. The trees are bearing their fruit. The fig tree and the vine yield their riches. Be glad, Dave Mason. Rejoice in the Lord, Dave Mason. For He has given you the autumn rains because He is faithful. He sends you abundant showers, both autumn and spring rains as before. The threshing floors will be filled with grain. The vats will overflow with new wine. I will repay you for the years the locusts have eaten. I want you to just take just 1 second. It's one of my favorite verses. One of my favorite verses. Some of you sitting here today, you've done some things, and you've done some things for a long time, and you honestly and sincerely are upset about the fact that your life has, not borne the kind of things that you'd like. You did some things you didn't want to do. You paid some dues you didn't want to pay. And, you can kind of look back on it, and it can kind of depress you. Well, here's the word. God can restore what the locust has eaten as if it was never gone. God can give you a life you've never had before. He can make you somebody that you've never been before. And it doesn't matter what yesterday is, because today is the day that the Lord has made. Think of it like this. All of a sudden, the locusts come into a brand new, beautiful, fully beaming harvest of corn. And it eats it all up and turns it into a big old mess. And like that, God can restore what the locust has eaten, put a full crop of corn right there. And you can have it all brand new. That's what born again means. Not of flesh, but of the Spirit. Not of flesh, but of the Spirit. I will repay you for the years the locust has eaten, the great locust, the young locust, the other locust, and the locust swarm. My great army that I sent among you, you will have plenty to eat until you're full. And you will praise the name of the Lord your God, who has worked wonders for you. Never again will my people be shamed. Then you will know that I am in Israel, that I am the Lord your God, and that there is no other. Never again will my people be shamed. And what he's actually saying to you and I is this. This is the focal point. Rend your hearts and not your garments. Return to the Lord your God, for he is gracious and compassionate, slow to anger and abounding in love. And he relents from sending calamity. I'll give you a simple illustration of that. Kurt Warner. His story's out there right now. Kurt couldn't get a job in football to save his life. But then God gave him another opportunity in another way. He humbled himself, and God actually gave him something. And you know what? Kurt Warner to this day is actually a decent guy. He's actually a decent guy. You know why? Because he rent his heart. Talent is not enough. You've got to have heart. The focal point. And afterwards I will pour out my spirit on all my people, and the sons and daughters will prophesy. The old men will dream dreams. The young men will see visions. Even my servants, both men and women, will pour out my spirit in those days. Another way of saying that is Matthew 11:28, that says, come to me, all you are heavy laden. I will give you rest from a broken, impure heart. Give you peace. I want to encourage us today. I told you that it's going to be hot. I told you it's going to be spicy. And I told you it was going to be a prophet. But I want to encourage you and I to trust, to believe, to follow. And I want you to know something. I don't care what's going on in your life. God can make your life beautiful. He can make your life wonderful. But you're going to have no other gods. Make no graven images. Don't take the Lord's name in vain. Honor the Sabbath and keep it holy. And then he will give you everything that the locust has eaten. Amen? Let's stand together.